DEATHCORElegacy Book 1 Part 2. Chapter 11. Enemy Fleet ETA, 30 minutes, the communications officer announced. They are still closing fast. Rear Admiral Una Adam did not look away from the tactical display. Drop us out of FTL now. The DEATHCORE fleet slipped back into real space in a coordinated wave of blue-white distortion. Moments later, Fleet Admiral Vorgon's formation emerged beside them, massive Cygnus warships locking into protective alignment as the stars steadied around both fleets. "They are going to be surprised as hell," Una said, studying the new intercept line. "They expected us to continue along the corridor approach. Instead, we cut inward and put ourselves between them and Cygnus." Fleet Admiral Vorgon's image appeared beside the star map, his 6 eyes narrowing with approval. "Exactly. An old orbital station sits near the Empire core world," Vorgon said. "If we reach it first, I can force an emergency diplomatic session under secure protocol before the compromised council can bury the treaty." Una watched the projected paths converge until they nearly overlapped. "Tell me we have a clean window." "A narrow one," Vorgon replied. "If our drives hold, we beat Nova to the station by 15 minutes. If they accelerate again, we meet them in open space." The tactical display flashed once, then space tore open ahead of them. For half a second, no one on either bridge spoke. The DEATHCORE fleet held its line. Vorgon's dreadnought settled beside them, shield arcs overlapping. Between the Allied formations and the Nova ships, empty space became a loaded gun waiting for a finger to twitch. On the shared encrypted command channel, Una and Vorgon spoke at exactly the same moment, their voices overlapping with cold, perfect authority. "Don't fire unless they fire first." The words echoed through both fleets like a restraint placed over a warhead. A heartbeat later, Una realized Vorgon had given the same order at the same instant. Across the encrypted link, her smile sharpened into something dangerous. Vorgon's answering grin was just as wicked, all teeth and battlefield promise. Neither admiral wanted to start the war, but both were ready to finish it. On the bridge of the Void Reaper, Vorgon's tactical pit erupted in controlled chaos as new contacts flooded the display. One officer looked up from the crimson-smeared grid. 30 ships and counting, my lord." Vorgon did not even blink. His grin widened instead, slow and predatory, as the enemy fleet continued to multiply across the tactical grid. 30? He said, dripping sarcasm. "That is nothing. They are full of human shit." The tactical officer's voice tightened as the count kept climbing. "Correction, my lord. 63. No, 65 enemy vessels." He swallowed, then glanced up from the display. "What is that human phrase?" "Holy shit. That is a whole lot of shit, sir." Vorgon's grin did not fade. If anything, it sharpened. "Do not fear, young hatchling," he said, his voice carrying across the bridge like a war drum. "We are mighty warriors, and today our enemies have made the generous mistake of gathering in one place." A low growl of confidence moved through the Cygnus bridge crew. Vorgon lifted one clawed hand toward communications. "Send the updated count to the Romulus," he commanded. "Rear Admiral Adam should know the Nova Empire brought enough targets for both our fleets." In the same instant, Rear Admiral Una Adam aboard the Romulus and Fleet Admiral Vorgon aboard the Void Reaper opened separate encrypted channels to Fleet Admiral Edison. Neither had to explain the situation. Both messages carried the same warning in nearly the same words. "The fight is about to begin. Come quickly." A heartbeat later, both command decks chimed. On the Romulus, Destiny announced, "Encrypted message sent." On the Void Reaper, Vorgon's ship AI answered in a deeper synthetic tone. "Encrypted message sent." One day behind them, aboard the UHDF Iron Verdict, Fleet Admiral Edison stood before the forward tactical wall as 2 encrypted alerts struck his command console at the exact same second. The bridge fell silent before the alarms even finished chiming. Commander Vale looked up from communications, his face tightening as the twin authentication seals resolved. "Sir, simultaneous priority messages from the Romulus and the Void Reaper, Admiral-level encryption. Both addressed to you." Edison did not move for a heartbeat. The timing alone told him enough. "Put them through." The message appeared across the display in 2 separate windows, different encryption signatures, same desperate meaning. "The fight is about to begin. Come quickly." No one on the Iron Verdict breathed too loudly. Edison read the words once, then again, and the grief he had mastered earlier hardened into something colder than anger. "Nova chose poorly," he said. Commander Vale straightened. "Orders, Admiral." Edison turned toward the command pit, and every station officer seemed to brace beneath the weight of his stare. "Battle Group Iron Verdict. All ships to emergency jump readiness. Shields to full combat threshold. Weapons charged. Safeties locked until my command. Notify every captain. We are moving to reinforce the treaty fleet." Across the bridge, officers snapped into motion. Navigation began carving a brutal intercept path through the star map. Tactical armed the fleet grid. Communications opened burst channels to every escort vessel in range. Vale's voice cut through the rising storm of confirmations. "Jump solution forming, sir. Fastest route puts us at the engagement zone in 22 minutes, but the strain will be ugly." Edison's eyes stayed on the 2 messages. Ugly still gets us there. The Iron Verdict answered beneath his feet, reactors climbing from controlled thunder to caged fury. Around it, the human battle group began to align, one warship after another, turning toward the distant fire waiting near Cygnus. Edison opened a fleet-wide channel. His voice carried through every deck, every hangar, and every ship under his command. "This is Fleet Admiral Edison. The Romulus and the Void Reaper have requested immediate reinforcement. We jump in 20 seconds. We do not arrive as revenge. We arrive as the line between Nova and the future they are trying to burn." He paused, and the bridge seemed to hold itself still. "All hands," Edison said, voice low and absolute. "Stand by to make history very uncomfortable for the Nova Empire." The countdown reached 0. Moments later, in open space, the Romulus and the Void Reaper held formation side by side. Both fleets had their fingers poised over the trigger, ready for the command to fire. Yet the silence stretched on like an eternity. 65 enemy vessels, Rear Admiral Una Adams said, her eyes fixed on the crimson markers. "What the hell are they waiting for?" "If they are waiting," Fleet Admiral Vorgon replied, "then they are surprised. Whoever commands their fleet is holding for further orders." Una narrowed her eyes. "So they are hoping those red markers scare us away. Is that what you were saying?" Vorgon's grin sharpened across the transmission. "Exactly. However," Vorgon added, "if their formation begins to break off on both flanks, that means their first mission failed. They could not scare us away, so they will have received new orders. Surround us and destroy us before we can sign the alliance treaty." Una looked from the red markers to Vorgon's transmission, her expression tightening. "Why are they so afraid of us becoming allies?" Vorgon's expression darkened. "Because this alliance does more than unite 2 fleets," he said. "It places Earth inside Cygnus politics as a recognized equal, and that threatens every hidden hand Nova has buried inside my empire. Once the treaty is sealed under secure protocol, every delay, every objection, every sudden emergency inside the Council becomes evidence. Nova is not afraid of our signatures, Rear Admiral. They are afraid of what those signatures will reveal." He leaned closer to his tactical display, all 4 eyes narrowing as the red marker shifted by fractions across the grid. "And there it is," he growled. "Port and starboard elements are drifting outward, slow enough to look like repositioning, precise enough to form a kill net. Their commander has stopped trying to frighten us away." Before Yuna could answer, the communications board lit up in a cascade of amber alerts. One by one, escort captains checked in across the encrypted net, their voices clipped, steady, and too calm to be anything but trained fear. Frigate Blackthorn, shields at combat threshold. Carrier Mercy of Chaos, fighter wings cold but locked. Launch rails armed. Void Reaper Auxiliary Line, Cygnus destroyers are holding formation, weapons bound by first fire restriction. The voices overlapped for half a heartbeat, then Destiny cut through them with surgical precision. Fleet Command channel stabilized. All captains confirmed. Nova flanking elements, increasing lateral spread by 12%. Yuna gripped the command rail. "All ships, this is Romulus actual. Maintain restraint. Track targets. Do not provoke them. If Nova wants a war, they will have to say it with the first shot." Across the channel, Vorgon's voice rolled in like thunder over stone. "Cygnus Fleet, match Deathcore discipline. Let Nova see 2 civilizations holding one line. No warrior fires without command." A burst of static cracked through the net. For an instant, every officer on the bridge looked up. Then Fleet Admiral Edison's signal punched through from deep jump interference, distorted but unmistakable. "Romulus, Void Reaper, Iron Verdict is inbound, 20 minutes out. Hold the line." The message repeated once, warped by the strain of emergency transit, then vanished into static. No one cheered. No one needed to. 20 minutes had become something harder than hope and sharper than fear. Jenkins looked up from tactical. "Admiral, Nova's forward batteries are powering." Yuna's voice dropped to a dangerous calm. "All channels open. Let every ship hear this." She waited until Destiny gave the silent confirmation, then spoke into the fleet-wide net. "Stand by. Do not flinch." Then space behind the Nova line shimmered. A massive battleship decloaked from the deep dark with every weapon already hot. Then hell broke loose. Its first salvo erupted before any warning could be sent, spearing across the void in blinding lances of fire. The Romulus and the Void Reaper took the opening hits together. Shields flared white across both hulls, alarms screamed through both bridges, and the fragile silence that had held 2 civilizations back from war shattered in an instant. On separate command decks, Rear Admiral Yuna Adam and Fleet Admiral Vorgon spoke at the exact same moment, their voices overlapping across the encrypted channel. "Shots fired! Shots fired!" Yuna's hand came down like a hammer. "All ships, return fire!" Vorgon's answering roar shook the speakers. "Cygnus Fleet, unleash hell." The combined line answered as one. Deathcore batteries ignited beside Cygnus war cannons. Fighter bays spat squadrons into the black, and open space became a storm of fire, shields, and falling stars. Meanwhile, down in the docking bay of the Romulus, the signalman stepped into the launch lane as the starfighter engines screamed to life. Amber deck lights flashed across the polished floor, then snapped green. He raised his left hand and gave the pilots a sharp thumbs up. With his right arm, he rotated his fist clockwise, ordering the launch cycle forward, then snapped into a crisp salute as the bay doors opened onto the dark. Then, because no one in Deathcore seemed capable of facing death with dignity alone, he added the unofficial gesture. Both arms up, both middle fingers raised toward the enemy fleet beyond the shield. A silent deck crew translation of "Go ruin their day." The gesture rippled through the waiting fighters like an electric current. One pilot slapped the side of her canopy twice and whooped loud enough to spike the squadron channel. Another bowed his helmet toward the signalman, as if receiving a blessing from the patron saint of bad decisions. A rookie near the rear of the launch line swallowed hard, checked his restraints for the third time, and whispered, "Okay. Okay." That is either very encouraging or deeply concerning. Merrick's voice crackled over the net. For the record, I choose to interpret that as a sacred commandment. "Of course you do, preacher," another pilot answered. "Try not to make it weird." Across the launch lane, helmet lights turned green one by one. Gloved hands tightened around control sticks. Breathing slowed. Laughter thinned into focus. Every pilot in the bay understood the joke, but every one of them also understood what waited beyond the shield. In those final seconds before release, every cockpit became its own small world. Some pilots wore fierce grins behind their visors, riding the rush like they had been born for the launch rails. Others sat very still, fear pressed flat beneath training, their eyes moving from shield status to weapon safeties to the names painted on the inside rims of their helmets. A few whispered private prayers, a few thought of home. One pilot kissed two gloved fingers and touched them to a faded photo taped beside her targeting display. But when the launch lights turned solid green, the fear changed shape. It did not vanish. It hardened. It became focus, anger, loyalty, and the stubborn Death Corps refusal to let anyone else decide who came home. Across the squadron net, breathing steadied into one shared rhythm. The pilots were scared, excited, reckless, and ready. And every one of them knew the person in the next fighter felt the same storm. Inside the lead fighter, Captain Roberts saw it through the canopy and barked a laugh over the squadron channel. He answered with an exaggerated okay sign, then pointed straight ahead at the black. "You heard the man," he said. "Death Corps flight. Launch hard and make Nova regret learning our name." The squadron channel erupted in overlapping replies as launch clamps cycled beneath them. "Death Corps 2, green across the board." "Death Corps 3, weapons safed and hungry." "Death Corps 4, if anyone scratches my paint, I am haunting maintenance." A nervous laugh slipped through the net before Merrick cut in, voice solemn as a funeral bell. "Death Corps 5 standing by. May our aim be true, our engines stubborn, and our enemies deeply inconvenienced." "Preacher," Roberts said. "That was almost inspiring." "Almost," Merrick protested. "You lost me at deeply inconvenienced," another pilot said. A rookie's voice came next, thinner than he probably wanted it to be. "Death Corps 9, all systems green, heart rate extremely not green." The veteran pilot beside him answered at once. "That means it is working. Keep breathing, 9. Fear keeps your hands honest." Roberts let the exchange breathe for 1 second, then his tone hardened. "Listen up. Once we clear the bay, pair off, stay inside the shield shadow until I call break, and do not chase glory into Nova gun lanes. We are not fireworks. We are knives." Across the channel, every pilot answered as one. Knives out. Magnetic clamps released in sequence. One by one, the starfighters shot down the rails and vanished through the glowing mouth of the bay, engines burning blue-white as they punched into the battlefield. Behind them, the signalman held the salute until the last fighter cleared the shield, then dropped his hand and muttered, "Bring them home, Loud." The deck of the Romulus bucked hard beneath the next impact, nearly throwing the signalman off his feet. He caught himself against the launch rail, looked out through the bay shield at the fighters streaking into the dark, and screamed so loud his voice vanished beneath the roar of engines and alarms. "Show those fucking bastards who owns the void." Chapter 12. The bridge of the Romulus shuddered under another distant impact, the deck lights flickering from white to blood red, as Nova fire hammered against the shields. Rear Admiral Una Adams stood at the command rail like the storm belonged to her, one eye locked on the tactical display, while the other swept the weapons pit below. Enemy destroyers cut across the star map in twin crimson arcs, trying to flank the Allied line and tear open the fleet's exposed side. Una's jaw tightened. "Weapons! Paint those 2 destroyers. I want targeting locks on their engines and forward batteries." Her voice cut through the alarms clean as a blade. "Those bastards think I'm going to blink because they brought numbers." She leaned closer to the display, eyes burning with battlefield defiance. "Not between my nuts, they won't." The weapons officer's hands flew across the console, and a sinister smile spread across her face as the destroyers lit up in the targeting grid. "Yes, ma'am." Locks confirmed. Across the forward display, Nova's flanking ships began to turn, unaware that the Romulus had already chosen them. Una gripped the rail, feeling the dreadnought's reactor thunder beneath her boots. "Good," she said. "Now let's teach them what happens when they mistake restraint for fear." Nova had been waiting for that exact moment. Behind the screen of flanking destroyers, a Nova dreadnought rolled its forward spine toward the Romulus, armor plates splitting open to reveal a plasma cannon the size of a transit tunnel. Blue light gathered in its throat, bright and unnatural, swelling from a cold glow into a miniature star. "Admiral," Jenkins warned, "enemy dreadnought is spiking hard. That is not a targeting sweep." Una saw it before the firing solution finished drawing. The Nova line had not been aiming at her escorts. They had used them as bait, shaping the battlefield until the Romulus sat exactly where the dreadnought wanted her. Almost. Helm. Hard ventral drop. Now. The Romulus fell beneath its own projected path with impossible grace for something so massive. In the same heartbeat, the Nova dreadnought fired. A lance of blue plasma ripped across the void, wide enough to swallow a frigate whole. It passed over the Romulus close enough to turn her upper shield layer white-hot, close enough for every officer on the bridge to feel the heat warning scream through their consoles. Then the shot found the destroyer behind them. The Nova destroyer vanished in a violent blue bloom, its shields collapsing inward, before the hull split apart from bow to engines. For one terrible second, the wreck looked like a star being born backward. Then it came apart, scattering molten armor and burning compartments across the battle space. Silence took the bridge for half a breath. Una did not blink. They just killed one of their own trying to tag us. Her mouth curled into something that was not quite a smile. Weapons. Update priority. That dreadnought gets my full attention. Outside the armored hull, Captain Roberts saw the blue blast carve over the Romulus and erase the Nova destroyer behind her in a single impossible flash. His cockpit canopy darkened automatically, but the light still burned across his visor like lightning trapped inside glass. For one heartbeat, the squadron channel went dead quiet. Then Merrick's voice cracked through the static. "Holy hell. Did they just miss us so hard they murdered their own guy? My dead grandmother laughing her ass off right now." "Focus, preacher," Roberts snapped, though his own pulse was still hammering. The wreckage of the destroyed Nova ship expanded across his tactical feed in a glittering storm of molten armor and dying compartments. Death Corps flight. Break wide and stay out of that debris bloom. Shields forward. Do not let the pretty blue death distract you. Death Corps 2 rolled past his port side, engines flaring bright against the black. "Copy that, Captain. Debris field is spreading fast." "Death Corps 9, the rookie called, voice tight but holding. "I have fragments bigger than my fighter coming across my nose." Roberts kicked his fighter into a hard spiral and cut between two tumbling slabs of Nova hull. 9, follow my vapor trail. Do exactly what I do, only less stupid." "Sir." Define less stupid. Survive and ask me later. The rookie obeyed, sliding through the gap an instant before a spinning engine section tore through the space he had occupied. His breathing flooded the channel, fast and ragged. "Deathcore 9 clear. I am officially never making fun of your flying again." "Good," Roberts said. "Put that in writing if we live." Ahead of them, the Nova Dreadnought's plasma cannon began to cycle down from its failed shot, cooling vents glowing blue along its spine. Roberts saw the opening at once. The monster had overcommitted. Its forward armor was open, its heat shields were exposed, and its escorts were still reacting to the friendly kill. His grin returned, sharp and dangerous. "All Deathcore fighters, new priority target. Nova Dreadnought forward cannon assembly. We are going to scratch that big blue throat before it spits again." Merrick gave a solemn little hum over the net. "Behold, brothers and sisters, the throat of arrogance." "Preacher," Roberts said, "if that turns into a sermon, I am muting you." "Understood, Captain. Short sermon only." Across the squadron channel, nervous laughter flickered and died beneath the rising howl of engines. The fighters tightened formation, diving low beneath the overlapping shield arcs of the Romulus before slashing toward the exposed Nova Dreadnought like a pack of knives thrown from the dark. Back on the bridge of the Romulus, Una watched the Deathcore fighters drop beneath her shield line and knife toward the Nova Dreadnought's exposed throat. Their icons streaked across the tactical display in tight blue clusters, too small to matter against a ship that massive, and exactly small enough to get where the Dreadnought's own guns could not easily track. "Jenkins," Una said, voice calm beneath the alarms, "overlay Roberts' attack vector on my firing grid." Jenkins threw the data across the main display. The Nova Dreadnought unfolded in wireframe, its forward cannon assembly burning blue-white at the center. Around it, Deathcore flight paths appeared as razor-thin lines threading through shield gaps, debris clouds, and overlapping enemy point defense arcs. "There," Una said, tapping 2 fingers against the command rail. "They are going for the vent collars. If we hit the outer armor too early, we blind them with debris. If we wait too long, that cannon cycles again and turns half my fleet into decorative plasma." The weapons officer glanced over her shoulder. "Recommend staggered fire, ma'am. Port batteries suppress the escort screen. Dorsal lances crack the cannon housing on your mark. No full broadside until Deathcore clears the throat." Una's eyes sharpened. "Good. Give me surgical, not angry." "That takes all the fun out of it," the weapons officer muttered. "No," Una said without looking at her. "It saves the fun for when I say broadside." A tight ripple of grim amusement moved through the pit, then vanished as the Dreadnought's cooling vents flashed brighter. Destiny's voice cut across the bridge. "Enemy plasma core is recycling. Estimated second discharge in 90 seconds. "Roberts," Una said, opening the squadron channel. "You have 90 seconds before that big blue bastard spits again. I am giving you a corridor and taking away their escorts." Roberts answered through static and engine howl. "Copy, Admiral. We see the throat. We would appreciate fewer angry little guns between us and it." Una lifted one hand. "Port batteries. Suppress the destroyers. Point defense. Rake anything trying to swat my fighters. Dorsal lances. Hold for my mark." Across the hull, the Romulus answered her. Portside gun decks rolled open in sequence, each weapon blooming with restrained white fire. The first volley slammed into the Nova escort screen, not to kill, but to shove, forcing 2 destroyers off their intercept angle and peeling their point defense grids away from Roberts' approach lane. Jenkins called out the effect. "Escort screen disrupted. Deathcore lane opening. Enemy Dreadnought rotating secondary turrets toward the fighters." Not today, Una said. Point defense, cut their hands off. The Romulus lit the void with precision fire. Needle-thin streams of flak and pulse rounds stitched across the dreadnought's outer hull, walking from turret to turret. Nova secondary batteries sparked, jammed, or died before they could finish tracking the incoming fighters. 60 seconds, Destiny warned. Una leaned closer to the display. Roberts' icons were almost inside the danger zone, too close for a clean, heavy shot, too far to guarantee their strike would cripple the cannon alone. Dorsal lances, she said softly. Charge to 30%. Aim for the armor seam above the cannon housing. Do not punch through. I want it cracked, not vaporized. The weapons officer swallowed her excitement and made her hands precise. 30% charge. Armor seam locked. Waiting on your mark. On the display, DEATHCORE fighters dove beneath the dreadnought's bow. Blue plasma bled from the cannon vents in unstable ribbons. The enemy weapon was waking up again. Admiral, Jenkins said, if we wait any longer, I know. Una's hand hovered above the firing authorization. Roberts, brace for friendly light over your heads. That sounds comforting and terrifying, Roberts replied. Una's smile was all teeth. Good. Mark. The dorsal lances fired together. 3 white spears tore across the battlefield and struck the Nova dreadnought just above the glowing cannon throat. They did not pierce deep. They bit, split, and carved molten cracks through the armor seam exactly where Una had ordered. The cannon housing buckled open like a wound. Una opened the squadron channel again. DEATHCORE, your door is open. Put something rude through it. Then, with a perfectly straight face, she added, elbows deep. A nervous laugh rippled through the bridge crew, quick, uneven, and immediately swallowed by the alarms. Aboard the Void Reaper, Fleet Admiral Vorgon watched the Nova formation with growing unease. The enemy line looked wrong. Not broken, not desperate, but deliberate, as if the chaos around the damaged dreadnought was only the surface of something deeper. His 4 eyes narrowed on the tactical display. Rear Admiral, he said over the encrypted channel, keep your eyes peeled. Something is wrong with this battle. I can feel it. On the Romulus, Una's smile faded from the squadron channel. She glanced from the exposed Nova cannon housing to the wider tactical map, suddenly seeing too many enemy ships holding back, too many guns silent, too much space left open by accident. Got it, she replied, her voice dropping into command steel. Destiny, full pattern scan. Jenkins, widen the threat grid. Nobody in Nova gets this quiet unless they are about to do something ugly. Deep within the Romulus, Destiny's core rested inside a solid-state substrate housing. She heard Vorgon's warning and began calculating. Deep within the Romulus, Destiny's core burned through billions of combat scenarios in less than a heartbeat. Then the darkness behind the Allied line split open. Another enemy fleet decloaked from nothing, weapons already charged, and a dark blue beam lanced straight toward the Romulus. Destiny assessed the threat instantly and triggered the emergency physical shield panels. Armor shutters slammed over the main bridge viewport, layering extra protection across the command deck. But Destiny was a few nanoseconds too late. On the bridge, Rear Admiral Una Adams saw the new fleet emerge from the black and watched the blue beam lance bear down on her ship. Evasive maneuvers, all ships, she ordered. Before she could finish, the beam struck. The beam punched through the bridge. By some impossible miracle, it did not cut all the way through the Romulus, but the damage was catastrophic. The blast killed nearly everyone on the command deck. Only 2 survived. Rear Admiral Una Adam and Sarah Connor. Atmosphere screamed from the shattered bridge as emergency seals failed, and both women were ripped into the dark. Una tumbled head over heels through the void, stars and burning wreckage spinning around her. Both of her legs were gone. Her left arm was gone. Pain should have swallowed her whole, but her advanced environmental suit fought to keep her alive. Nanotechnology spilled across the torn seams of her body, sealing ruptured tissue, clotting major arteries, and locking pressure around wounds that should have killed her in seconds. Through the chaos, Yuna forced one shaking hand toward a cargo pocket on her suit. Her fingers found the personal comm tucked inside. She pressed the emergency transmit stud, and the device pulsed once against her palm. The message was sent. Meanwhile, aboard the Void Reaper, Fleet Admiral Vorgon saw the new enemy fleet fully decloak. At its center hung a capital battleship nearly the size of his own dreadnought. His 4 eyes widened. "I know that fucking ship," he growled. Then the blue-white lance carved through the battlefield and struck the Romulus, punching through her shields. Something deep in Vorgon's soul broke open. One word escaped him, raw and small, beneath the thunder of battle. "No." It sounded as if he had lost another hatchling. Grief became fury in the space of a heartbeat. Vorgon slammed one clawed fist against the command rail and roared across his fleet channel. "All Cygnus vessels, focus fire on that capital ship. Tear its shields apart. Spit hellfire until there is nothing left but metal and regret." Chapter 13. In the docking bay of the Romulus, Thomas Hanks, former crewman of the Mockingbird, now reassigned to the newly renamed Death Corps fleet, had just finished up in the head when the whole ship bucked hard enough to make the walls groan. He stepped out, still fastening his utility belt, when the deck kicked sideways beneath him. Hanks lost his footing, dropped to one knee, and slammed into the deck plates with a metallic thud. "What the fuck is that all about?" he muttered. Then a blue-white glare flooded through the docking bay doors, washing the entire hangar in ghostlight. The Romulus rocked even harder. "I got a bad feeling about this battle," Hanks said, because apparently one bad feeling was not enough for the day. Then he saw wreckage spinning past the bay shield, pieces of the Romulus itself. Oh shit. Without waiting for orders, he bolted across the flight deck in search of a rescue vessel. He knew exactly what came after hits like that. People blown into the dark, bodies tumbling in the void, and survivors running out of time. Hank sprinted past fuel loaders, loose cargo nets, and one deckhand, who wisely chose not to ask questions. A rescue craft sat clamped to the right side of the flight bay, close enough to reach and ugly enough to survive a miracle. "You'll do," he said. He slapped his keycard against the lock, pressed his palm to the glass panel, and waited as the scanner crawled over his hand. A calm computer voice announced, "Access granted." Hanks dove inside, dropped into the pilot seat, and strapped in. Before he could seal the hatch, 3 Marine grunts stormed aboard with identical looks of disbelief. In perfect, horrified unison, they shouted, "What the hell are you doing in here?" Hanks flipped 3 switches without looking back. "I'm on a rescue mission." Grunt 1 stared at him. "Now? At this time? During a space fight?" Hanks finally turned, dead serious and somehow ridiculous. "You in or out?" While they blinked at him, his hands flew across the squawk checklist, one item after another. "Strap in, boys," he said. "I'm about to bust some balls." "Talk about balls. You're batshit crazy to go out there," Grunt 1 said, grabbing the nearest harness and yanking it over his armor. Grunt 2 slapped the bulkhead beside him. "Hell yeah, I'm in." Grunt 3 dropped into the jump seat with a grin that looked one bad decision away from becoming a medical condition. "I'm in too. I need to feel the power between my legs." Hanks shot him a look over his shoulder. "That is a rescue throttle, not a dating profile. Strap in." The rescue craft shuddered as clamps released one after another. 6 minutes after Hanks had climbed aboard, the ugly little bird lifted off the deck and slid into open space. Grunt 3 stared at the console, then at Hanks. Holy shit. You ran the squawk in 6 minutes. Grunt 2 nodded with sudden respect. It's true what they said about you, Seaman. You're a goddamn miracle worker. That checklist usually takes 10. Hanks shoved the throttle forward and sent the craft screaming toward the debris field. Miracle worker, criminal suspect. Depends who reads the report. Hanks blasted into the dark, the rescue craft slamming up to 8 Gs hard enough to make every harness beg for legal representation. A slab of debris spun across his path, close enough to shave paint off the canopy. He yanked left, snapped right, punched through a gap no sane pilot would call a gap, then threw the ugly little bird into a full 360 backflip. Somewhere behind him, one Marine made a sound that belonged in a classified medical report. Not far off, Death Corps starfighters tore into Nova interceptors, trading fire in bright, vicious arcs, while Hanks swept the debris field for suit beacons, emergency pings, or any poor bastard blown clear of the Romulus. Grunt 1 locked both hands around his restraints. I just deployed an unauthorized biological weapon. Grunt 2 stared through the canopy as an interceptor exploded nearby. Holy hell, this is not a rescue mission. This is a hate crime against my spine. Grunt 3 squeezed his eyes shut. Lord, if you get me out of this, I swear I'll make better choices. He opened one eye. Not good choices. Let's stay realistic. Just better. The cockpit went silent for half a second. The comm had picked up every word. Hanks dodged a burning chunk of hull, rolled the craft sideways and said, Outstanding. We came out here for survivors and found spiritual growth. Grunt 1 groaned. I found something too, but nobody wants a status report. Grunt 2 snapped. If your status report has smell, keep it classified. Grunt 3 raised one trembling hand. Permission to transfer to infantry. Bullets are more honest than this. Hanks grinned without taking his eyes off the debris field. Denied. Infantry has standards. The sensor console chirped once, then again. Grunt 1 leaned over the display, still pale from Hanks's flying. We got a ping. Hanks snapped his head toward him. Whose? Grunt 1 tapped the screen, and the color drained from his face so fast, it looked like the suit had vented him. His voice cracked, caught between horror and fury. It's our Rear Admiral. The cockpit went dead silent. Every joke died where it stood. Even Grunt 3 stopped praying bargains to the Lord. Hanks stared at the beacon marker for one hard second, then unbuckled. I'm suiting up. Grunt 1 looked at him. Sir? Hanks pointed to the pilot seat. Marine, take the controls. Grunt 1 swallowed, then snapped forward. Yes, sir. Hanks pulled his helmet from the rack. How far out is the beacon? Grunt 1 checked the range twice, like the numbers might change if he bullied them hard enough. 10 minutes at current burn. Hanks sealed his helmet collar with a hiss. Make it 8. He turned toward the rear hatch. Marine 2, Marine 3, you're with me. We bring the Admiral home. Both Marines rose at once, fear still in their eyes, but their voices locked together like steel. Yes, sir. ET of 5 minutes, Marine 1 announced. Hanks checked his advanced environmental suit twice, then twice again. His hands moved fast, but carefully over every seal, latch, pressure gauge, and emergency clamp. He snapped the space pack onto his back, clipped into the safety line, and watched the 2 Marines do the same. No one trusted their own gear alone. Each man checked the others, tugging straps, confirming oxygen flow, and locking helmets into place before stepping toward the hatch and the black beyond it. ETA 1 minute, Marine 1 called. Hanks drew a hard breath through the suit comm. Ready, boys? 3, 2, 1, mark, Marine 1 said. Right before Hanks and the two Marines jumped, a heavy thud slammed against the front of the rescue vessel. The sound carried through the hull like a fist against a coffin. Hanks froze. No. No, no, no. His voice dropped, rough with dread. Captain Roberts is not going to like this at all. He had meant to say it to himself, but all three Marines heard him. Worse, they understood exactly what he meant. Outside the forward viewport, a body drifted against the hull. Former Lieutenant Sarah Connor of the Phoenix floated in the debris field, turning slowly in the rescue craft's lights as if the dark itself refused to let her go. Her visor was cracked in a spiderweb pattern across one eye. Frost had crawled over the exposed edges of her face and eyelashes, leaving part of her expression frozen beneath a thin crust of white crystal. The lower half of her body was gone, sealed only by ruined suit fabric, emergency foam, and the terrible mercy of vacuum. One gloved hand hung near her chest, fingers curled as if she had tried to reach for something in her final seconds. For one awful second, horror and anger held the cabin in place. No one breathed. Marine 2 lowered his head, and Marine 3's hand rose halfway toward the viewport before stopping against the glass. Hanks felt the old memory of Connor's voice hit him harder than the sight itself. Calm on the bridge, sharp under pressure, alive. Now she was only inches from them and impossibly far away. Then grief turned into motion, because standing still would dishonor her. "Bring her in," he ordered. With grim care, the four of them recovered Connor and pulled her into the vessel. They moved slowly, almost gently, as if she might still feel the careless bump of a shoulder or the scrape of armor against her suit. When the hatch sealed behind them, the cabin lights fell across what remained of her, and the truth became smaller, closer, and crueler. No one spoke her name after that. They didn't need to. The silence carried it for them, heavy enough to make every man in the craft bow his head. Then Hanks turned back toward the hatch. Beyond it, Rear Admiral Una Adams' beacon still pulsed in the dark. He launched into open space, safety lines snapping tight behind him as wreckage burned across the battlefield. "I got you, ma'am," he said, voice shaking but certain. "I got you. You're safe now." Then his suit lamp found her. Rear Admiral Una Adam drifted in the wreckage field, her beacon still pulsing against the side of her ruined suit. Both of her legs were gone. Her left arm was gone too, torn away somewhere between the shattered bridge and the dark that had tried to keep her. The suit's emergency systems had sealed what they could, silver nanotech crawling over the wounds like desperate stitching. But the sight still hit Hank so hard, his breath caught inside his helmet. His heart dropped lower than it had when they brought Sarah Connor aboard. Not because Una was an admiral, not because command would lose a legend if she died out here. It hurt because she had looked at him. Thomas Hanks, the reckless seaman everyone called Shot-Eye, the guy most officers expected to screw up before they expected him to matter. And she had seen something worth trusting. No one in his life had ever made him feel good enough to be part of something bigger. Not really. They laughed at him, used him when things broke, and remembered his name only when someone needed a miracle or a scapegoat. But Rear Admiral Adam had put him near the heart of the mission. She had trusted his instincts. She had made him feel, for the first time, that maybe he belonged in the Death Corps fleet for more than luck and bad decisions. And now she was floating in front of him, broken nearly beyond belief, still alive because her suit refused to surrender. Hanks reached for her with both hands, every joke, every reckless grin, every stupid comment burned out of him. "No, ma'am," he whispered, voice cracking across the comm. "You don't get to die after making me believe I could be better." Then the side doors close on the rescue vessel ready to go back home towards the Romulus, although the battle still raging on. Then, static blared on their comms. Chapter 14. The Iron Verdict slipped out of FTL 15 minutes too late, with 80 Death Corps warships tearing into real space behind her. 15 astronomical units above the raging chaos, Fleet Admiral Edison stood on the bridge and saw the final enemy capital battleship decloak behind the Allied line. Its weapons were fully charged. A white-blue beam lanced from its bow and struck the Romulus directly through the bridge. Edison made the decision in an instant. "All ships, open fire," he ordered, his voice cold enough to freeze the bridge. "Kill every enemy vessel except the one that bloodied the Romulus. That capital ship is mine." Across the Death Corps formation, main guns aligned with brutal precision, guided by shipboard AAIS and hardened combat crews. 65 enemy ships vanished under synchronized fire, atomized into drifting debris and thin white smoke that scattered across the void. On the Iron Verdict, Edison turned toward weapons control. Bring the railgun online. It was an ancient idea from Earth's past, reborn as a modern terror, a solid projectile fired at impossible velocity. The weapon could launch at 120% light speed, but Edison lowered the charge to 80%. He did not want the capital ship destroyed. He wanted it helpless. The shot fired. The rod crossed the battlefield in a flash and struck the enemy capital ship between its engine drive and spinal frame. The impact crippled the vessel without tearing it apart. Power failed across its hull. Its engines died. Its weapons went dark. The ship drifted, dead in the water, helpless in the middle of the battlefield. Then Edison opened the assault channel. "Send in the DBO units. Bring me the commander of that ship alive, and place them in our custody." His gaze did not move from the crippled capital vessel. No POWs. The entire bridge of the Iron Verdict understood exactly what that meant. No prisoners of war. 5 boarding pods launched from the Death Corps line and slammed into the enemy armor like iron fists. Breaching charges burned through the hull, and nearly 80 DBO units poured into the capital ship. Room by room, corridor by corridor, they erased every hostile presence aboard. Everyone except the commander Edison had ordered, brought back alive. Inside the crippled capital ship, the DBO units moved without voices. Their armor swallowed the emergency lights. Their boots made no sound on the ruined decks. Every sealed hatch opened for them eventually, by code, by charge, or by force. The enemy crew fought in scattered pockets, desperate and cornered, but the Death Corps boarders did not slow down. They were not there to conquer the ship. They were there to collect one living answer. Far behind them, the rescue craft carrying Rear Admiral Una Adam lurched toward the wounded Romulus. Static screamed across every channel. Hanks kept one hand locked on Una's torn suit harness, and the other braced against the hatch frame while the Marines dragged her inside. The cabin pressurized in violent bursts, lights flickering over blood, frost, and silver nanotech still fighting across her wounds. "Door sealed," Marine 2 shouted. "Then move," Hanks snapped. "Get us back to the Romulus before her suit gives up." Marine 1 slammed the throttle forward. The rescue craft screamed through debris and crossfire, dodging chunks of shattered bridge plating, burning fighter wreckage, and the white-hot remains of Nova ships atomized by the Iron Verdict. Behind them, Una's beacon blinked weaker with every pulse. Hanks dropped beside her and checked the suit display. The numbers made no sense at first, then they made too much sense. Blood pressure collapsing, oxygen cycling unstable. Neural response faint but present. Alive. Barely. He swallowed hard and leaned close enough for his helmet visor to touch hers. "Stay with me, Admiral," he said, voice low and shaking. "You hear me? You are not dying in my ugly little rescue bird. I have standards now, apparently." Across the battlefield, the DBO strike leader reached the enemy command deck. The blast door had been welded shut from the inside. For 3 seconds, the unit studied it. Then a shaped charge bloomed blue-white, and the door folded inward like paper. Smoke rolled across the bridge. Bodies lay scattered among shattered consoles. At the center of it all stood the enemy commander, one hand pressed to a bleeding side, the other gripping a ceremonial blade. The strike leader raised one armored hand. The DBO units did not fire. They advanced instead, slow and inevitable. On the iron verdict, Edison watched 2 feeds at once, the rescue craft racing away from the wounded Romulus, and the enemy commander being forced to their knees aboard the captured capital ship. His face revealed nothing, but his hands closed slowly over the command rail. One screen held the woman who might still be saved. The other held the one person who might explain why Nova had tried to kill her. "Bring them both to me," Edison said, "and nobody lets either one die before I get my answers." Static ripped across the rescue craft's comms, hard enough to make Hanks flinch. Then Fleet Admiral Edison's voice cut through it, cold and absolute. "Whoever is flying that rescue vessel, turn and burn for the iron verdict. Now!" Hanks looked from the wounded admiral on the deck to the shattered silhouette of the Romulus ahead of them. Every instinct told him to keep flying home. Every order in the universe had just changed direction. He swallowed once and grabbed the controls. "Yes, sir." On the bridge of the iron verdict, Edison kept his eyes on the rescue feed as the small craft banked away from the Romulus and burned hard toward his flagship. For one moment, the war outside seemed to fall silent around him. Then he muttered, low enough that only Commander Vale heard, "If Una dies, I will glass a few planets. If she survives, we will still go to war, but for political reasons instead of grief." Vale's expression tightened. The words had not been shouted. That made them worse. He glanced across the bridge, checking every station, every officer, every face. No one had reacted. Tactical was buried in fire control reports. Navigation was chasing debris drift. Communications was fighting static. No one else had heard the Fleet Admiral promise planetary fire in the quiet space between orders. Vale let out a breath he had not realized he was holding, then stepped half a pace closer to Edison. "Sir," he said carefully, voice low, "the bridge did not hear you." Edison did not look at him. "Good." The single word carried no relief, no shame, and no apology. Only control stretched so thin it had become dangerous. Only then did Commander Vale understand the true shape of the Admiral's rage. All this time, the rumors had been wrong. Una and Edison were not lovers. They had never been that. The bond between them was something older, deeper, and far more dangerous to threaten. Edison had treated her like a daughter, not by blood, but by choice. Vale looked at the rescue feed again and felt a cold weight settle in his chest. "Please survive, Rear Admiral," he thought, "because if you do not, the Nova Empire will not survive him." The rescue craft hit the iron verdict's approach corridor like a wounded bird running from a storm. Its port engine coughed blue fire, its hull scarred by debris strikes, its emergency transponder screaming across the docking net. Flight control cleared every lane ahead of it without asking questions. Anything smaller than a cruiser got out of the way. "Rescue craft, this is Iron Verdict Docking Control," a controller said, voice tight but steady. "Bay 7 is open. Medical trauma team is standing by. Maintain current vector." Hanks gripped the controls with both hands. "Current vector is optimistic," he muttered. The cockpit shook as another warning light died on the panel. "Bay 7, we are coming in hot, crooked, and spiritually damaged." Marine 1 looked up from the co-pilot station. "Did you just tell docking control we are spiritually damaged?" "They have sensors," Hank snapped. "They know." Behind him, Una's suit monitor gave a thin, dying chime. The humor vanished from the cabin. Hanks glanced over his shoulder. and saw the medical readout dip again. Marine 2 was on his knees beside her, one armored hand pressed against a seal that kept trying to fail. "Pressure's dropping," Marine 2 shouted. Hank stopped joking. "Patch it. Use your hand. Use foam. Use prayer. I do not care. Keep her breathing until those medics have her." The Iron Verdict's docking bay opened ahead of them, a glowing rectangle cut into a wall of armored darkness. Tractor beams caught the rescue craft just as Hanks killed the throttle. The little vessel lurched, screamed, and slammed down onto the deck hard enough to shower sparks from its landing struts. For half a second, no one moved. Then the hatch blew open from the outside. Medical teams poured in wearing white combat armor streaked with red emergency markings. A trauma sled unfolded beside Una before Hanks had finished unbuckling. Hands moved everywhere at once, cutting damaged suit material, locking pressure clamps, injecting stabilizers, connecting portable life support directly into her suit's failing systems. "Neural activity faint but present," one medic called. "Massive blood loss. Nanotech containment unstable. Prep surgical bay alpha now." Hank stumbled after them as they lifted Una onto the sled. "She was alive when we found her," he said, too fast. "She was alive the whole way. I kept her breathing. I kept—" A medic caught him by the shoulder. "You did your job, Seaman. Let us do ours." The words should have helped. They did not. Hanks watched the trauma sled race across the docking bay, surrounded by medics and Marines, Una's pale face barely visible beneath the cracked edge of her helmet. Every few seconds, the sled's monitor flashed warning red. At the far end of the bay, the main doors opened. Fleet Admiral Edison entered without escort. The docking bay seemed to shrink around him. Deck crews stepped aside. Marines snapped to attention and then forgot how to breathe. Even the medics faltered for half a heartbeat before remembering that rank meant nothing if the patient died. Edison's eyes found Una on the trauma sled. For one terrible second, the Fleet Admiral disappeared. The commander of Death Corps, the man who had just erased a Nova fleet, the officer every bridge crew feared and trusted in equal measure, all of it cracked. What remained was an old soldier staring at the broken body of the daughter he had chosen. Then the crack sealed. "Move," Edison said. The medics moved faster. Hank stood frozen beside the rescue craft, hands smeared with blood and suit sealant. Edison stopped in front of him. For a moment, neither man spoke. Hanks looked like he expected judgment, punishment, maybe both. Instead, Edison placed one hand on his shoulder. "You brought her back," he said. Hanks swallowed hard. "Not far enough yet, sir." Edison's hand tightened once, not in anger, but in recognition. "Then we finish bringing her back." He held Hanks's gaze a moment longer, and when he spoke again, his voice had lost its steel around the edges. "Stay nearby for a little while, Seaman, until the Rear Admiral's condition stabilizes." His eyes glistened, but no tear fell. Not here. Not in front of the bay. Not while she was still fighting to live. "If she wakes," he added quietly, "she should know who brought her home." Commander Vale stood just inside the docking bay entrance, close enough to hear the small exchange, and far enough to pretend he had not. The confirmation settled into him with quiet certainty. The rumors had been wrong in every possible way. Edison did not look at Una like a lover. He looked at her like a father watching his child be carried toward the edge of death. Vale glanced after the trauma sled and felt the same cold thought return. Survive, Rear Admiral. For all our sakes, survive. Journal entry. Fleet Admiral Edison. Timestamp 3197 AD. 30,000 light-years from Earth, beyond human maps and prayers, the Galactic Empire. Cygnus ruled the darkness. Before humanity encountered the Empire, people looked up from their fragile blue world and believed they were alone. Still, The dream endured. Across generations, humans imagined crossing the void, sailing between stars, and finding another civilization waiting in the black. Hope drove them forward, and curiosity kept their eyes fixed on the heavens. Yet Earth remained divided. Nations fought over borders, oil, power, and resources that seemed small beneath the infinite sky. Humanity survived 2 great wars, shed blood over pride and fear, and still found time to argue over whether pineapple belonged on pizza. But when a terrible threat emerged from the mid-core of the Milky Way, strong enough to eclipse every old hatred, humanity did what it had never done before. It stood as one. For 800 years after first contact, I have carried the weight of my ancestors' mistakes, but I still carry hope. I will learn from the past, do better in the present, and help build a future worthy of redemption. In those centuries, humanity left its old political divisions behind and became something close to an empire itself. Chapter 15. Fleet Admiral Edison steadied himself in the corridor outside Medical Bay Alpha, forcing his breathing into something calm before he returned to the bridge. Beyond the sealed doors, surgical teams fought to keep Rear Admiral Una Adam alive. He waited for any word, any answer, that her condition had stabilized, though every passing second made the silence feel heavier. Commander Vale spotted Edison standing outside Medical Bay Alpha and walked toward him with measured steps. The Fleet Admiral looked carved from stone, but Vale could see the strain beneath the discipline. I still have faith in the old man, Vale thought. I am just waiting for him to return to command. Vale stopped a respectful distance away. "Sir," he said quietly, keeping his voice low enough that it would not carry to the medical staff beyond the sealed doors. "The bridge is holding. The fleet is secure. Vorgon's line is maintaining formation, and the captured Nova commander is under guard." Edison did not turn at first. His eyes remained fixed on the medical bay entrance, as if he could force an answer through the door by sheer command authority. "That is good," he said. "Keep them steady." Vale hesitated, then stepped closer. "With respect, sir, they are steady because they believe you are still standing. But they need to see you on that bridge before belief starts turning into fear." At that, Edison finally looked at him. The old admiral's face was controlled, but his eyes carried the exhaustion of a man holding back too many fires at once. "And what do you need, Commander?" Vale swallowed the easy answer. He could have said orders. He could have said clarity. Instead, he chose the truth. "I need you to not disappear into this hallway, sir. Not now. Not while everyone is looking for the man who just held an empire back from becoming a massacre." For a moment, the corridor was quiet except for the muted pulse of medical alarms behind the door. Edison's jaw tightened, but he did not rebuke him. "You are very close to forgetting your rank, Vale." "No, sir," Vale said. "I am remembering yours." The exchange ended when the doors to Medical Bay Alpha hissed open. A medic stepped out, face drawn with exhaustion, gloves still stained from the emergency surgery. Edison turned before the man could speak. Vale straightened beside him. "Rear Admiral Adams' condition is stable," the medic said carefully. "However, she has slipped into a coma. We do not yet know when or if she will wake." He paused, choosing the next words with care. "But for now, sir, she is alive." For one long second, Edison said nothing. The words seemed to strike him in 2 different places at once. Stable, like mercy. Coma, like a blade. His shoulders lowered by the smallest measure, as if the weight of her death had stepped back from his chest. But it did not leave him. It merely changed shape. He closed his eyes, and for the first time since the battle, Vale saw the old admiral let himself feel the hit. Not enough to break. Never enough for the corridor, the medic, or the fleet to see him fall apart. But enough. His hand curled into a fist at his side, trembling once before he forced it still. "Alive," Edison repeated quietly. The word sounded less like a report and more like a prayer he had forgotten how to say. He opened his eyes again, and the grief was still there, buried under command discipline like fire under steel. "Then keep her that way." The medic nodded. "Yes, sir. We will do everything possible." Edison looked past him toward the sealed doors. Somewhere beyond them, Una Adam lay suspended between survival and silence. He wanted to go in. He wanted to sit beside her until she woke, to tell her she had done enough, to order her back from whatever dark edge she was walking. Instead, he straightened his uniform jacket and buried the need where command could not reach it. "Commander Vale," he said, his voice returning to its colder shape. Vale snapped to attention. "Sir." "Inform the bridge that I am returning to command," Edison said. He did not look away from the medical bay doors. "And have the Nova commander prepared for interrogation." Vale heard the change in him immediately. Relief had not softened Edison. It had focused him. "Aye, sir." Only then did Edison turn away from Medical Bay Alpha. Each step back toward the bridge looked steady, disciplined, and absolute. But Vale, walking half a pace behind him, knew better. The Fleet Admiral had not left Una behind in that room. He had carried her with him, into command, into grief, and toward whatever answer the Nova commander was about to give. "Commander Vale, before we interrogate the enemy, order the rear formation to begin a temporary patrol," Fleet Admiral Edison said. His voice was steady again, but there was a hard edge beneath every word. 3 light-year radius, full deep scan sweep. If those damn fools are planning to jump back in and ruin my day, I want to know before they even think about lighting their drives." Vale acknowledged the order with a sharp nod and turned toward the nearest command terminal. "Rear formation, this is Commander Vale. Execute temporary patrol deployment on Fleet Admiral Edison's authority. 3 light-year radius. Deep scan sweep active. Stagger your vectors and keep your drives warm." Across the rear of the Death Corps formation, ships began peeling away from the main line with disciplined precision. Destroyers slid outward first, their engines burning pale blue as they took the outer picket positions. Frigates followed in paired arcs, spreading into overlapping patrol lanes, while sensor drones launched from their bays like silver insects scattering into the dark. Within minutes, the fleet's rear formation stretched into a vast defensive web. Each vessel held enough distance to cover wide space, but close enough that no ship would be isolated if Nova tried another ambush. Deep scan arrays unfolded from hull housings, long-range dishes turning toward the black, while quantum sensors searched for jump shadows, heat ghosts, drive residue, and anything pretending to be empty space. On tactical displays throughout the Iron Verdict, the patrol radius bloomed as a blue sphere around the fleet. 3 light-years of monitored darkness. Search grids overlapped one another until there were no blind corners, no quiet lanes, and no easy place for a hostile fleet to hide before making a jump. Every new scan pulse rolled outward like a silent warning. Death Corps was watching. Vale listened as confirmations came in one after another. Rear picket Alpha in position. Frigate pair Delta sweeping high vector. Destroyer line Omega reporting clear so far. No one sounded relaxed. That was good. Relaxed crews missed ghosts. Nervous crews found them. He glanced back at Edison. The Fleet Admiral stood motionless near the command rail, eyes fixed ahead, already thinking past the patrol and toward the interrogation waiting for him. Around them, the fleet expanded its awareness into the dark, hunting for the first sign that Nova was foolish enough to come back. Edison and Vale entered the bridge together, already issuing orders over the command channel before the doors had fully opened. "Rear patrol, maintain your sweep and report every shadow," Vale ordered, his voice sharp and controlled. "No blind spots, no assumptions." Edison moved straight toward the command rail, and the bridge seemed to tighten around him, as every officer snapped back into full focus. He opened his own comm line without slowing. "All captains, this is Fleet Admiral Edison. Hold defensive posture. Keep weapons safed but charged. If Nova has another dagger hidden in the dark, I want it spotted before it clears the sheath." Acknowledgements rolled in from across the formation, clipped and tense. Tactical officers bent over glowing grids. Communications filtered patrol chatter into clean command reports. Navigation adjusted the fleet spread by fractions, careful not to leave the wounded Romulus, the Cygnus line, or the captured Nova capital ship exposed. Vale took his station beside the command pit and kept one hand pressed to his earpiece as new confirmations arrived. "Rear pickets report clean so far, sir. Deep scan net is active. No jump signatures within the patrol radius." Edison gave a single nod, eyes fixed on the tactical wall. "Good. Then bring me the Nova commander." His voice dropped, colder and quieter than the alarms still fading across the bridge. "It is time we find out who sent them to murder my people." "Have the enemy commander brought to interrogation room 4, Edison ordered, his eyes never leaving the tactical wall. Then he turned toward Vale. "Commander Vale, take the bridge." "Yes, sir," Vale replied at once, stepping into the command position. Edison walked for the exit without another word. 2 DBO units fell in behind him, their black armor swallowing the bridge lights as they moved. No one said it aloud, but every officer understood what that meant. For the enemy commander, very bad news had just started walking down the corridor. Interrogation room 4 sat deep inside the armored spine of the Iron Verdict, far below the bridge, and far from any window that might remind a prisoner the universe still existed. The chamber was small by design, all black alloy walls, sound-dampening panels, and one metal restraint chair bolted to the deck beneath a single white interrogation lamp. Cold air drifted from overhead vents in thin, misty streams, carrying the sterile bite of disinfectant, burnt circuitry, and old fear. Along the walls, silent surveillance nodes watched from behind armored glass, while 2 DBO units stood motionless in the corners, like execution statues, waiting for permission to breathe. Every surface had been built to deny comfort. Every shadow seemed placed there on purpose. When Fleet Admiral Edison walked into interrogation room 4, shock flickered through him, but only for a heartbeat. He buried it behind the cold mask of command and let his eyes settle on the prisoner waiting beneath the harsh overhead lights. "Well, well, well," Edison said, his voice edged with contempt. "Look what the bugs dragged in." He let the insult hang there, aimed squarely at the insect-like species before him. Then his mouth curved into a humorless smile. "My prince," he added, dripping sarcasm, "may I ask what brings you here today?" In that same instant, Prince Drax recognized the Admiral and smiled. "I heard you found yourself another hatchling," said Prince Drax of the Galactic Empire Nova. Fleet Admiral Edison's smile did not fade, but his gaze shifted silently to one of the DBO officers. The officer understood at once. 2 more DBO officers, already waiting inside interrogation room 4, forced the enemy commander down and pinned him in place. The first officer stepped toward the prince, drew a torchblade, and severed one of the alien's forearms. Drax's scream tore through the room, guttural and metallic, like 2 slabs of iron grinding together. Edison watched without flinching. He had decided to reach backward into Earth's brutal military past and use its oldest methods of torture to drag the truth from the enemy. The DBO officers did not celebrate. They did not flinch either, at least not where anyone could see it. Their black visors hid their faces, but their reactions lived in smaller places. The slight tightening of a gauntleted hand around a weapon grip, the measured shift of a boot against the deck, the way one officer turned his helmet a fraction toward Edison, as if confirming that the order had truly come from the man they followed. These were soldiers built for boarding actions, corridor massacres, and impossible retrieval missions. Yet Interrogation Room 4 felt different from battle. In battle, death came fast and honest. Here, every breath stretched out under the white lamp. Still, none of them questioned the Admiral. Their loyalty held them motionless, hard as armor, while Drax's metallic scream faded into the sound-dampened walls. Prince Drax folded over the restraints as much as the chair allowed, his remaining arms clawing uselessly against the metal clamps. Dark blood steamed where the torchblade had cut, hissing against the sterile floor in bitter droplets. His smile was gone. In its place came a contorted snarl of pain, disbelief, and royal outrage, as if the universe itself had committed treason by allowing anyone to touch him. His 4 eyes flicked from the severed limb to Edison's face, searching for hesitation, regret, any weakness he could twist into control. He found none. The realization hit harder than the blade. For the first time since his capture, Prince Drax stopped acting like an untouchable heir of Nova and looked like what he was beneath the titles: wounded, cornered, furious, and afraid. "What happens in this room today does not leave it," Fleet Admiral Edison ordered, his voice calm enough to be terrifying. "Whatever you witness is to remain under the highest level of secrecy. Am I understood?" The 4 DBO officers answered with a single unified motion. Silent acknowledgement, absolute obedience. Edison turned back to the prisoner. "Prince Drax, do you remember 2 years ago when a junior ambassador came to your home empire for peace talks?" Drax's breathing rasped through clenched teeth. Then, even wounded and restrained, he forced a cruel smile. "Yes," the prince said. "I blasted her ship because I was not interested. Later, when you called through quantum communication, whining that I had killed your hatchling, I realized who she was. Your daughter." His smile widened. "And you let it go like a weakling." The room changed. No alarm sounded. No one moved. But all 4 DBO officers understood at once. The junior ambassador had not been just another casualty report. She had been Erica Edison, his child. In that moment, whatever doubt had touched them vanished. If someone had murdered their children and mocked the grief afterward, they knew exactly what they would do. One by one, each DBO officer straightened with renewed purpose, confirming their loyalty not with words, but with a kind of silence that meant they would follow the Fleet Admiral wherever this path led. During the exchange, the DBO officers held their positions with the rigid stillness of soldiers, trying not to become men. At Edison's secrecy order, their shoulders squared in perfect unison, armor plates shifting with a soft mechanical whisper. None of them looked at one another, but the room seemed to tighten around their silence. When Drax spoke Erica's name through mockery, one officer's head dipped by the smallest fraction, as if the insult had struck somewhere beneath the armor. Another flexed his fingers, once against the grip of his weapon, before forcing his hand still. The 2 holding Drax did not loosen their restraint. If anything, their gauntlets locked harder around him, not out of cruelty, but because understanding had become personal. By the time the prince called Edison weak, all 4 DBO officers had gone utterly motionless again. Their backs straightened, their helmets angled toward the Admiral, and their silence changed from obedience into allegiance. Behind their black visors, each DBO officer carried the same thought in a different shape. One remembered a daughter asleep against his chest during shore leave and imagined a Nova prince laughing over her ashes. Another thought of the names carved into memorial walls, soldiers and civilians alike, and understood that some wounds did not heal simply because command ordered silence around them. The youngest among them felt anger rise so fast He had to lock his knees to keep from stepping forward without permission. The officer nearest Edison thought only one thing: cold and certain. If this were my child, no law in the universe would be enough to stop me. None of them spoke those thoughts aloud. They did not need to. Their stillness became a shared vow, sealed beneath armor, discipline, and the terrible knowledge that the man standing before them had carried this grief alone for 2 years. Fleet Admiral Edison said nothing. He simply crossed the room, each step slow and deliberate, and took the torchblade from the DBO officer's hand. For a moment, he stood over Prince Drax in complete silence, letting the prince see the grief and fury buried behind his eyes. Then Edison moved with terrible precision, bringing the blade down in one slow, clean cut across one of Drax's lower arms. The prince's scream erupted again, raw and metallic, filling the room until even the sound-dampening walls seemed to strain beneath it. Edison did not look away. He wanted Drax to understand that this was no longer punishment delivered by soldiers. This was a father answering a wound that had waited 2 years to bleed. At last, Prince Drax broke. His breath came in ragged metallic gasps, and the royal arrogance in his face cracked beneath pain and fear. "We do not fear the Earth-Cygnus alliance," he confessed, each word dragged out like broken glass. "We fear what it will expose." His 4 eyes flicked toward Edison, then away. "Nova has placed corrupted allies within Cygnus, council voices, military advisors, trade ministers, intelligence handlers. If Earth stands beside Cygnus as an equal, your treaty will give them the authority to investigate what we buried there." Drax swallowed hard, hatred and terror twisting together in his voice. "That is why we attacked. Not because you were weak. Because once the alliance is sealed, our hidden hands inside Cygnus will burn in the light." The confession passed through the DBO officers like a shockwave no one outside their armor could hear. None of them spoke, but every visor turned a fraction toward Drax, and every weapon hand settled into a steadier grip. The truth rearranged the room around them. This was no longer only about Erica Edison, or one father's grief, or one prince's cruelty. Nova had not merely murdered a diplomat. It had planted rot inside an allied empire and tried to slaughter an entire treaty fleet to keep that rot hidden. Behind their black visors, the officers understood the scale of it. One thought of every soldier who had just died above Cygnus and felt the confession place a target on every corrupted name Drax had implied. Another silently marked the words, council voices, and intelligence handlers like coordinates on a kill map. The youngest officer's anger cooled into something colder than rage: purpose. Their bodies remained still, disciplined and obedient, but the silence in Interrogation Room 4 had changed again. It was no longer only loyalty to Edison. It was the first quiet breath of a war that now had a reason. Fleet Admiral Edison absorbed the confession without a word, but the silence around him changed. His expression did not twist into surprise or satisfaction. It settled into something worse: calculation sharpened by grief. For 2 years, Erica's death had been a wound, with no enemy large enough to hold all of his anger. Now Drax had given that wound a shape, a network, a purpose. Edison looked at the prince as if he were no longer seeing a royal hostage, but the first loose thread in a conspiracy that reached deep into Cygnus and all the way back to his daughter's grave. Slowly, he lowered the torch blade to his side. "Names," he said at last, his voice quiet enough to make every DBO officer go still. "You are going to give me names, locations, handlers, routes, and proof. And if even one of those hidden hands is still inside Cygnus when this is over, Prince Drax, I will make sure Nova understands that Earth does not forgive betrayal dressed as diplomacy." Edison stepped closer until the white interrogation lamp cut hard shadows across his face. "And for your people's sake," he said, each word quiet and merciless, You had better hope the Rear Admiral survives her condition, because that Admiral is my chosen hatchling." The confession struck the room harder than a shouted threat. The DBO officers went utterly still. Behind their black visors, understanding moved through them with the weight of a sealed order. Una Adam was not merely a high-ranking officer to Edison. She was the child he had chosen after Nova had taken Erica from him. One of the officers lowered his helmet by the smallest fraction, not in pity, but in recognition. Another tightened his grip around Drax's restraints until the metal gave a faint protest. Their loyalty did not need words. It settled deeper, colder, and more absolute than before. Prince Drax saw the change and finally understood the scale of his danger. His four eyes widened as the meaning took hold. If Rear Admiral Una Adam died, Edison might not stop at justice, interrogation, or war. The prince knew his homeworld could be glassed beneath that grief, turned from Empire crown jewel into a field of burning reflection. For the first time, Drax did not look at Edison like an enemy commander. He looked at him like a disaster, waiting for permission. Inside Edison's silence, two names circled like knives: Erica and Una. Erica was the wound he had learned to hide beneath medals, orders, and years of disciplined command. Una was the wound still open, still bleeding somewhere beyond the interrogation room, surrounded by surgeons and machines that could not promise him she would wake. He wanted to believe he was standing there as Fleet Admiral of Earth, as commander of Death Corps, as the officer responsible for a war larger than any one life. But beneath every rank and every oath, one thought kept striking through him with brutal clarity. I have already buried one daughter. I will not bury another. His fingers tightened around the torch blade until the grip creaked. He forced his breathing to remain steady, forced his face to stay cold, forced the father inside him not to burn the room down before the Admiral got every answer Nova owed. Chapter 16. Before Fleet Admiral Edison left Interrogation Room 4, he stopped at the door and looked back. I am done here, for now. Bring the prisoner to the brig until further notice. He paused, his voice turning colder. I have a date with Destiny. The DBO officers moved to secure Prince Drax, but Edison did not leave yet. Drax lifted his head, blood dark against the restraint chair, and forced a broken smile. Running away already, Admiral. I expected more from the father of two dead hatchlings. The room went dangerously still. One DBO officer shifted as if ready to strike, but Edison raised a hand without looking. Careful, Prince, Edison said softly. You are running out of parts I am willing to leave attached. Drax laughed through clenched teeth. You think pain makes truth matter? Erica is still gone. Una will follow. And when she does, your precious Death Corps will become nothing but grief with guns. Edison turned fully now, his face emptied of every expression except command. No, he said. Grief is what men feel when they still believe mercy has a place in the room. Drax's smile faltered. And what do you believe? Edison reached inside his uniform coat and drew an ancient relic from Earth's brutal past, a solid metal blade forged from titanium carbide. The metal caught the interrogation lamp in a thin, merciless line. I believe, Edison said, crossing the room with swift, deliberate steps, that some debts deserve to be paid in a language even princes understand. Before Drax could answer, Edison drove the blade through one of the prince's upper hands, pinning it against the restraint frame. Drax screamed. Edison leaned close, his expression carved from grief and fury. That is for Una. Then he pulled the blade free, turned away, and walked back toward the command bridge. Fleet Admiral Edison returned to the command bridge as if nothing had happened, though everyone in the room seemed to sense the shadow walking in with him. Commander Vale glanced up from the tactical station and gave him a careful, almost reckless smile. So, Vale asked, humor threading through his voice. How did the peace talk go? Edison stopped beside the command rail. For a moment he said nothing. Then a deadly smile touched his face. It went as planned. Get me comms with the Romulus, Edison ordered. Yes, sir, Commander Vale replied, already moving across the console. The channel opened with a soft burst of static. Sir, Destiny, the Romulus AI, answered. Edison studied the damaged command feed and arched one eyebrow. How in the world did you manage to get a bloody nose? He asked, dry sarcasm cutting through the tension. That is nothing, Destiny replied. It is just a flesh wound. However, I did my very best to keep everyone alive. At the same time, Fleet Admiral Vorgon listened through the secured, encrypted comms on the holographic display, his predatory smile widening as he heard the exchange between Edison and Destiny. Destiny, how is the ambassador doing? Edison asked. And the first secretary? And our astro-xenobiologist? Are they ready to make history? Destiny's voice answered through the damaged feed, steady despite the static. Ambassador Gardo is alive and mobile. First Secretary Sanchez and Dr. Henry are stable. All three are prepared for transfer. Edison looked toward the holographic display where Vorgon listened, his predatory smile still present, but quieter now. And you, my old friend, Edison said, is your empire ready for humanity? Vorgon's 6 eyes narrowed with something like respect. Before he could answer, Edison turned back to the channel. Destiny, have a shuttle prepared for the ambassador and his aides to board the Iron Verdict. Vorgon cut in, his voice carrying the weight of urgency. Send them to the old orbital station near Cygnus. It is 15 to 20 minutes away. If we are going to force the treaty through secure protocol, that is where history must happen. A second channel flickered open from the damaged Romulus, and Ambassador Gardo's face appeared in the transmission field. His formal coat was torn at one shoulder, his hair was out of place, and a thin line of dried blood marked his temple, but his eyes were sharp. Fleet Admiral Edison, Gardo said, voice steady despite the wreckage behind him. If history is waiting at that station, then I suggest we stop keeping it waiting. He glanced toward Vorgon's image and offered the smallest diplomatic nod. Fleet Admiral Vorgon, I understand the risk. A compromised council, a Nova attack, and a treaty being forced through emergency protocol will give your enemies every excuse to call this illegitimate. Gardo leaned closer to the feed. So let them. I will put my name on that treaty in front of every recorder you have, every witness we can gather, and every coward who thought bloodshed would frighten humanity away from the table. Edison's expression softened by a fraction. Ambassador, you understand this may put you in the direct line of political fire. Gardo gave a dry smile. Admiral, I survived a Nova ambush, a collapsing bridge, and your military's charming habit of turning every diplomatic mission into a war crime waiting for paperwork. Political fire sounds almost relaxing. Even Vorgon gave a low rumble of amusement. Gardo's smile faded, replaced by calm resolve. Prepare the shuttle. Sanchez and Henry come with me. If Cygnus still has honest voices left, they need to hear us before Nova's lies arrive first. Fleet Admiral Edison opened the ship-wide channel, across the Iron Verdict, and every vessel still tied into the command net. Speakers snapped live. His voice carried through corridors, hangars, trauma bays, engineering decks, and bridge stations with the hard precision of a battle order. All hands, this is Fleet Admiral Edison. Before this fleet proceeds to treaty protocol, we execute recovery operations. Damage control teams will conduct full compartment-by-compartment assessments on every surviving ship. Engineering sections will seal hull breaches, stabilize reactors, isolate compromised power grids, and report structural integrity status by priority code. Fire suppression crews will clear active burn zones. atmosphere control will lock down every pressure loss. I want every captain, every chief, and every department head reporting clean numbers. Not estimates, not hopes, and not excuses. His tone hardened further, cold enough to steady the wounded and sharp enough to cut through panic. Medical Command will establish casualty collection points, confirm killed in action lists, triage the wounded, and prepare immediate transfer to fleet trauma facilities. Recovery teams will sweep the debris field and account for all personnel, living, dead, or missing. No service member is abandoned. No hull is written off until Command confirms it unrecoverable. Signal the star carrier and bring it into recovery formation. It will take custody of destroyed vessels, crippled ships, wreckage containing our dead, and any craft unable to continue under its own power. Once casualty accounting is complete, wounded are transferred, and the fleet is secured for movement, we advance to Orbital Station Omega, Cygnus 13. There, we will meet the Cygnus Empire's ambassador and their aides under armed diplomatic protocol. We arrive disciplined. We arrive organized. We arrive as a fleet that has taken fire, held formation, and remains combat capable. Nova failed to break our line. They will now watch us sign the treaty they tried to stop. Down in Medical Bay Alpha, Thomas Hanks stood near the trauma ward entrance with dried blood on his sleeves and suit sealant still under his fingernails. For what felt like hours, he had listened to muffled orders, surgical alarms, and the hurried footsteps of medics fighting on the other side of the sealed doors. When a senior medic finally stepped out and said Rear Admiral Una Adam was in stable condition, Hanks felt his knees almost give. He caught himself against the wall, lowered his head, and let out a breath he had been holding since the rescue craft first found her beacon in the dark. "Thank God," he whispered, the words rough and barely there. For the first time since the battle, his shoulders relaxed by the smallest amount. But the relief did not last long. Across the corridor, a covered trauma sled waited in silence, guarded by two medics who would not meet anyone's eyes. Hanks looked toward it once and felt the warmth drain out of him. He already knew who lay beneath that sheet. Soon Captain Roberts would be called down from the flight deck. Soon, someone would have to tell him that Sarah Connor had not made it back alive. Hanks closed his eyes, grief settling heavy in his chest. They had saved the Rear Admiral, but the void had still taken its price. Captain Roberts arrived 10 minutes later, still in his flight suit, helmet tucked under one arm, and soot streaked across one cheek. He slowed the moment he saw Hanks waiting near the trauma ward. "Shot eye," Roberts said, trying to keep his voice steady. "Tell me the Admiral made it." Hanks nodded once, too quickly. "Rear Admiral Adam is stable, sir. Coma, last I heard, but alive. The medics say she's fighting." Roberts closed his eyes for half a second and let the breath leave him. "Good," he whispered. "Good. That stubborn woman would probably court-martial death for being late." He opened his eyes again, and the faint relief faded as he noticed Hanks was not smiling. "What else?" Hanks looked toward the covered trauma sled across the corridor. Roberts followed his gaze. The captain's grip tightened around his helmet. "No," Roberts said quietly. It was not a question. It was refusal. "Captain," Hanks said, his voice rough, "we found Lieutenant Sarah Connor in the debris field. She was outside the Romulus bridge section, drifting near the rescue vector. We brought her in. We tried to move fast." He swallowed hard. "I'm sorry, sir. She was gone before we reached her?" Roberts stared at the covered sled as if his mind had rejected the shape of it. "Sarah Connor?" he asked, the name breaking in the middle. "You're sure?" Hanks nodded, eyes lowered. "Yes, sir. I confirmed the suit beacon and I detag myself." For several seconds, Roberts did not move. The corridor noise seemed to fade around him. The medics, the alarms, the distant thrum of damaged engines. When he finally spoke, his voice was low and empty. "She told me to come back alive." Hanks forced himself to look up. "She meant it, sir." Roberts gave a short, bitter laugh that did not become humor. "Yeah, that sounds like her. Give an order, then make it impossible to disobey." His jaw clenched, and the helmet under his arm trembled once before he forced his hand still. "Was she alone?" "No, sir," Hanks said. "Not at the end. We brought her home. The Marines stood with her. Nobody joked. Nobody looked away." Roberts looked at him then, grief sharpening into gratitude he could barely carry. "Thank you." Hanks shook his head. "Don't thank me, Captain. I didn't bring her back the way I wanted." "You brought her back with honor," Roberts said. His voice hardened around the words because if it softened, it might break. "That matters." Hanks stood straighter, but his eyes stayed wet. "She deserved better than a sheet in a hallway." Roberts turned toward the covered sled and slowly placed his helmet on the floor. Then he came to attention. The movement was not sharp. It was careful, like something inside him had cracked, and he was holding the pieces in place by force of training. "Lieutenant Sarah Connor," he said quietly, "you completed your watch." Hanks came to attention beside him. 2 medics across the corridor saw the salute and lowered their heads. For a long moment, no one in Medical Bay Alpha moved. Roberts dropped his salute first. "I need 1 minute," he said. "Take 2, Hanks replied. "I'll stand guard." Roberts stepped toward the covered trauma sled as Hanks moved to the corridor entrance and quietly blocked anyone from passing. The captain stopped beside Sarah and stood there with his hands at his sides, fingers curled so tightly the knuckles beneath his gloves went pale. For several seconds, he did nothing. He only looked down at the sheet, at the shape beneath it, and tried to make his mind accept that the woman who had ordered him to come back alive would never hear him report compliance. "You stubborn, impossible officer," Roberts whispered. The words came out broken, stripped of rank and squadron command. "You were supposed to be on the bridge giving me hell over the comms. You were supposed to tell me my approach vector was reckless, call me Featherhead, and make me promise not to die like an idiot." His breath caught. One hand rose, hovered above the sheet, then lowered carefully to rest near where her shoulder would have been. He did not pull the cover back. He had seen enough death today. He wanted his last memory of Sarah Connor to be her voice through static, steady and fearless, telling him to come back alive as if she had any right to make that sound like an order. "I came back," he said, quieter now. "I did what you told me. I brought my pilots home. Not all of them. God help me, not all of them. But I came back." His jaw trembled once before he forced it still. "And you were not there to yell at me for being late." The corridor beyond him continued moving. Medics ran, stretchers rolled, orders cracked over speakers. Somewhere outside the hull, damaged ships limped toward recovery formation, and the fleet prepared to continue toward Omega Cygnus 13, as if the universe had not just taken one person too many. Roberts hated that most of all. That war never stopped long enough for grief to catch its breath. He bowed his head, and the first tear fell before he could stop it. Only one. He wiped it away with the heel of his glove, like it had betrayed him. Then another came, and this time he let it. No sob escaped him. No sound. Just the terrible silence of a pilot captain standing beside a fallen officer and learning that survival could feel like failure. "I should have been faster," he said. "I should have seen the beam coming. I should have kept the line tighter, flown higher cover, done something." He shut his eyes hard. "You would tell me that is stupid. You would say command is not magic, and pilots are not gods, and guilt is a waste of oxygen, unless it makes you better." He gave a weak, shattered laugh. You always did know how to ruin a perfectly good spiral. Robert straightened slowly. The grief did not leave him. It settled somewhere behind his ribs, heavy and permanent. But he forced his shoulders square because there were pilots waiting for orders, wounded waiting for cover, and an enemy empire that had just made Sarah Connor part of the cost of peace. He reached down, picked up his helmet, and held it against his chest. "I will remember your voice," he said. "Every launch, every approach, every time some rookie thinks fear means weakness, I will remember you telling me to come back alive." His expression hardened, not into rage, but into something colder and more useful. "And I will make sure they do." Roberts came to attention once more. This time the salute was clean, sharp, and exact. "Lieutenant Sarah Connor," he said, voice steadier now. "You are relieved. I have the watch." When he turned away, Hanks was still standing guard near the corridor. The seaman did not ask if Roberts was all right. That would have been insulting. Instead, he simply stepped aside and gave him room. Roberts stopped beside him. "Shot eye." "Sir?" Hanks answered. Roberts looked back once toward the covered sled. "If anyone asks, she came home with honor." Hanks nodded, his voice rough. "Yes, sir, she did." Roberts put his helmet back under one arm and started toward the flight deck. Each step looked steady. Each one cost him. By the time he reached the corridor bend, his captain's mask had returned. But behind it, Sarah Connor's final order followed him like a ghost. "Come back alive." Roberts did not know yet how he would keep that promise for everyone under his command. He only knew he would spend the rest of the war trying.